Sick of the same old radio sound? Then you need vibrant radio.
Very good afternoon to Simon McIntosh, who has brought us a wonderful topic. And Glenn, Simon is the closest from here. He lives in Fenham. I come from Heaton.
Yeah, I've only got half a mile to walk.
I've only got 2.5 miles. What have you got to?
37.
37 miles one way.
One way.
Oh my God. So that must take an hour.
Yeah, thereabouts.
Okay. So obviously the topic is very interesting to you, that you bothered to volunteer yourself. So tell me about yourself first of all. I think, Simon, it'll be important to know whence you came, about your relationships. A man talking about relationships, what has the world come to?
Well, that's the thing. Yeah.
Go on, tell us about your relationship.
Well, I think the start of it really is actually my journey in learning about relationships is having been in a marriage for 25 years and it falling apart.
Okay, the marriage falling apart.
Yeah, the marriage just completely collapsed, and I hadn't seen it coming, and I felt really shattered because.
What have I done? What have I done?
Well, exactly. I knew that things weren't brilliant. I mean, it was obvious that.
Well, whose is?
But actually having it sort of really smash apart was something that really took me by surprise. So I spent the last 7-8 years
studying it,
trying to work out. Okay, so
what went wrong?
What happens in relationships? And I realised that I knew nothing about it. Like most men, our conditioning is not conducive to us learning about what happens in relationships.
But big boys don't cry.
Exactly, and big boys don't even know what's going on inside. they stiff upper lip. They just keep stum and just get on with things.
Yes.
And I discovered that actually that doesn't work very well in relationships.
It hurts.
No.
Because inside you're just another human, just like the women are.
Yeah.
You've got all the same feelings. You cuddled your mother, you kissed her, you hugged her, you drank milk from her breast, and suddenly you're this hard robot who's there just to earn the bread.
It's not that sudden, but it's a gradual process.
Over time.
Yeah, it's sort of a 2-year-old boy is just like a 2-year-old girl. They have all access to the whole range of emotions.
And a 1-year-old boy is just not even a human child. Have you seen on Facebook, fish and them kissing? It's amazing the things that you see on Facebook, So humans have the capacity to reach out, and animals too, and it's all weeded out of us, don't you think?
Yeah, indeed. And the boy kind of learns to shut down instead of going from joy to anger to jealousy to whatever, all in a few seconds.
Yes.
We actually start shutting that down and actually losing access to knowing what's going on.
Because big boys don't cry.
Absolutely. So I realised that I'd been shutting down my emotions. I'd been blaming my ex-wife for all sorts of stuff, which was stuff I'd been carrying from my childhood.
But she's a victim of her upbringing, you're a victim of yours.
Absolutely.
And never the twain met.
All of us actually carry huge wounds. So I wanted to do something about it. So but
tell me a bit more, as a child,
yeah.
Were you just an average English child playing with toys and Muppets and things like that? Or were you extra soft-hearted and liked music and quietly would do some painting and poetry and romancing at the age of 4? Well, which were you?
I think my ambition as a child was not to be noticed, because I thought that being noticed actually could get you into trouble. So I really tried to fit in always. And I think I was probably a sensitive child, and I loved my imaginative games and things.
E.T. style.
Yeah, but I pretended I was in Africa because I'd been born in Africa.
Tell us more.
And
that must make a big difference to your outlook on life.
Well, I don't actually remember it because I nearly died as a child, and my parents came back. Well, they were living in Nigeria. And I was a 2-year-old. I think I was probably confined to my pram. My mother believed in putting babies at the bottom of the garden,
locking them up, and keeping them safe, and
keeping them safe
away
in the
from
pram.
The real world.
They can watch the leaves and do nothing. Except I do think that my fear of snakes comes from a cobra looking at me while I was in the pram, because a cobra was killed very close to my pram.
Right.
My God.
So I have a feeling that me and a cobra kind of eyeballed each other.
Oh my God!
I was pretty young.
You didn't stick your tongue out at him, did you?
I think I probably froze, and actually learning to freeze has been lifestyle
then.
habits
Yeah.
ever since then.
Right. So what age were you when you came to Britain?
2.
So you don't remember much except this King Cobra.
That's it. Yeah.
It sounds like a Mowgli story, you know.
Only Mowgli isn't tied up in a pram.
Nagina was the.
I remember. Now my dad read me
Mowgli
stories. Yes, so I loved when he read to me the Jungle Book and.
So was your dad a
just
softie?
He was soft with small children, but he didn't know how to deal with them when they got bigger. Because he grew up not knowing his dad. His dad had been a railway engineer in India.
All right.
And his granddad had been a railway engineer in India.
Oh my God.
So 2 generations.
So the one good thing the Brits left us was the Indian Railway. So we can thank you very much. For
Indeed, yeah.
I very much thank you, sir, for the Indian Railway.
It's funny actually how your life parallels mine.
Oh, go on.
Really?
Very, very.
Go on, tell us.
No, because I was waiting for you to finish.
Okay, all right, okay, go on then. So you have got a long lineage from India, a la Kipling.
Indeed, but my dad was brought up. He was sent back to England when his sister died when she was 3. The whole family was brought up in England, seeing my dad his dad every fourth year.
That must be really hard. It's almost like Winston Churchill's life.
Exactly. He grew up without any real relationship with his dad. So he was okay with very small children. He loved having a baby he could dandle on his knee.
Yes.
But
once they started speaking and arguing,
yes,
and sticking their tongue out,
absolutely, he was off to play golf, and so I didn't really see much of him growing up.
Okay, so you came to England and you're 2 years old. Where was this?
It was in Surrey, south of London. And
life was okay?
Life was okay, yeah. Some of my happiest memories are playing with the boy across the road. And we pretended...
Do you remember his name?
His name was Jeremy.
Oh, hello,
and
Jeremy.
Jeremy and I played... in Africa, we pretended that we were hunting big game in Africa for hour after hour around his garden, and I just loved it.
He had never seen Africa?
No, I don't think he'd ever been there. But
you took him to.
I did. And we would sort of his mum was quite happy because he knew that we would be sort of hiding behind the blackcurrant
and pretending
or doing something,
waiting for the hippopotamus or something.
Indeed,
rhinoceros. Okay, then
wouldn't be allowed now. Health and safety. What's happening to him? I can't let him out there.
He thinks there's a snake there. Let's go to the psychiatrist. Okay, and how was school for you?
I went to boys' schools, all boys.
Which again is a castration. I very seriously believe that children should grow up in a natural world.
Yeah.
Yes, you'll be a bit distracted by the girls, but when would you not be distracted by the girls? If you learn how to cope with distraction from the girls, this is what the nuns and the priests would say. I went to a Catholic school.
Did you? Right.
Yeah. Poor thing. So you went to a boys' school, and was it like a residential school, or were you?
I didn't board for the first few years, but from the age of 10 onwards, I was a boarder.
So just when you started exploring relationships and sexuality, you were sent to a boys' school.
Absolutely. So I grew up with completely in the dark about relationships. I knew nothing about handling. I didn't have any sisters.
Yeah.
My mum wasn't really in her feminine. She was she'd been an army officer and a colonial officer's wife.
Oh my God!
And sort of
is your mum alive?
Really sort of. No, she died 2 years ago. I had a really good relationship in the last few years of her life.
You
lost yours
makes
recently.
Two of us the same, because my mother was not quite Hattie Jakes, but she never expressed her emotions. My mother wrote very soft stories,
Did she?
She wrote books on... I don't know if I have one here. I don't have one here. My mother wrote a story book with 16 stories, got it published at the age of 14 in 1942 in British India from a village.
Wow.
So there's a very
something.
soft side of her, but somewhere she learned to hide her feelings.
Yeah.
And so
but then in those days,
yes,
you weren't
allowed.
You weren't allowed to, especially as men, to show.
Oh, even women.
Yeah, you had to have the stiff upper lip.
Yes.
And just do it quietly.
Yes,
discreetly.
discreetly.
Yeah.
So I would say in India, a man going kuchi 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 with his baby, and then the father-in-law comes immediately to put the kid down.
Really?
Because that child
same sort of conditioning.
Because that child is a product of sexuality
Yes.
and softness and femininity, and the old man might think I love his daughter. What the hell? Of course I do. So things were very Victorian, even for yourselves, you two selves. Okay.
Suppression, really.
Yes.
Suppression of feelings and emotions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I was brought up by women because my mother was divorced, and so I was brought up totally by women, and I was too soft. I didn't have the male.
Okay, the male hormone.
No,
Gene.
not the male hormone.
No, I know him. He's had, he's got a very good marriage, and he's had a bad one too, and he's fought illness, and that's why I tease him a lot. But he's an amazing guy. Just to introduce him, I met Glenn at the Speakers Club, and he was just asked to make a pronto speech, and he talked about his illness and his divorces. I thought, what a spiritual guy, you know. I instantly fell in love with him. I said, this guy has to come on radio. Is that true?
That's true.
I was so impressed that this white-haired, 6'2", wasp. And I was so impressed that he was talking feelings, you know. I'll give you quickly an example of the opposite. About a year before I left practice, a young English lad, about 32, walks in and said, Doc, I think I've got peptic ulcer. And I said, okay, what's eating you? Well, I had a curry last night. I said, didn't you know English? Like, I said, what's eating you? So he says, could it be that I lost my father 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
I said, how many fathers do you have? You know, very good, telegraphically. But I've known this guy from the age of 0.
Really?
I looked after his mother when she was pregnant.
And he hadn't thought to mention it.
Yeah.
That's absolutely typical of a male reaction.
And so I wrote him some sleeping tablets and say, see me in 2 weeks. He cried, and the prescription was still left on the table. So did you see, I made an offer which I hope he wouldn't take, like an olive branch, because he'd really come for tablets. Or some other doctor might have sent him with a pipe down his throat. It's nothing to do with that. He's a child hurting for his mum. Or dad. So, okay, you were telling us more then.
So I went away to boarding school, and that's an environment where you've got to learn to survive.
Exactly.
I was in a boarding school as well.
Right, and so I really repressed everything.
Yes.
And I didn't even know I was angry about things. I discovered when I was middle-aged that I could learn when I was angry if I listened to myself. And when I started when I started shouting, I was probably angry. I couldn't feel it, but I could notice
on the surface.
I said, so how do I know what I'm feeling until I hear what I'm saying? And that's that was the product of growing up as a child, having to just be really careful, keep away from the bullies.
Walking on landmines and eggshells.
Absolutely, keep away from the very dubious teachers that some of them that there were in these schools.
Yes, that's true. I had that problem.
But dubious in
I was a
sense...
bedwetter at boarding school because I didn't know why, but every morning, and of course I used to get the slipper, whack it, but discovered that the headmaster was eventually into little boys.
Well,
but fortunately he kept away from me, you know.
I was in the hospital for 10 months. My mother went to Sweden with a little boy, and there's 3 children. My father couldn't look after 3 children. So my grandfather, my mother's father, said, put him in the hospital temporarily, only 2 miles away from home. I used to be very unhappy there because it's all discipline, and you know, Catholic and discipline. And new Catholics, converts, they're even more disciplined. So the priest said, Father Thomas said, Anand. I said, yes, Father. You get very sweaty in the night. Go to the middle floor. Don't put the light on. Put on the fan, and I'll come and see you. And something in me told me this is not right. So I put on the light and then put the fan on. So there's a lot of lurking gayness in boarding schools.
And the clergy as well.
And the clergy, yes.
Because it's been repressed. That's why.
Yes, because they've grown up in the war.
It's not natural. To repress those. I mean, we're built in with them. I mean, God made us in a certain way. One of them, which is that you have sexual desires. And
instead of talking to us and explaining, the priest would never. I mean, but again, you got Jesus was celibate, Virgin Mary was celibate. All Christians are celibate. No, they're not celibate. They need to rejoice in sexuality, you know.
Yeah. I mean, if you haven't got the access to the female sex, then there's always masturbation.
Yes.
Which relieves the pressure.
Yes, but then that's. But Hindus go blind if you do
that. Is that right?
Where's my glasses?
I mean, people think that it's wrong, but if it relieves the pressure and stops you from your thoughts going in that particular direction,
it's better than rape.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're saying that your teachers were a bit dicey.
Yeah, they were.
And again, that would repress your sexuality. Anything that you look in the mirror and find yourself attractive, you start cutting it off because you didn't want to be hounded by teachers.
Yeah, no, I still find it difficult to talk about things being sexy. There's still kind of there's something in me.
Simon, I think
Simon,
I think you're very sexy.
Oh, thank you.
There's a table in between them.
No,
I can't hit him from here.
Why are we so scared? Why are we so scared? And okay, so you finished school quite happily?
Yeah, pretty happily.
Okay.
And
what were your topics, subjects? I meant.
Oh, I did a whole range of things, but I loved art most.
Okay.
So art and English I really enjoyed. I also did maths and physics, which I didn't like.
You did the masculine subject.
I did a combination of them.
All right.
And went into a profession which I then found I couldn't do.
Was?
Architecture.
Okay.
Oh,
So just two
maths.
I spent
Yeah.
8 years sort of
Hating it.
Well, just I enjoyed various bits of it.
Like what?
But I really enjoyed designing a really good plan.
Yes.
To actually make a building work for people. I was never interested. Most of my colleagues liked the way the buildings looked, the elevations.
Yes.
Sort of, they wanted to photograph buildings with no people in, just as very pure bits of art.
Yeah.
I was never interested in that. I was interested for how it worked for people.
You're serving humans.
Yeah.
The Beacon building, it took them a year and a half before they put a signboard up. The Beacon building is still controlled by the architect telling them not to put posters in the window.
Oh, right.
I mean, what the hell is this about?
Yeah.
Is it about people or is it about the architect's fantasy?
Mind you, I mean, some of these things that buildings that architects and whatnot want to preserve, I think, well, it's just a concrete slab, for heaven's sake.
Yes.
What aesthetic value has it?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And how is it serving human beings?
Yeah.
Okay, so you moved away. Were you married at the time?
I got married while I was
an architect.
An architect, and I had a good marriage with 4 children. At least it certainly felt pretty good for a long while. But it's one of those things that the cracks were developing over time and not being dealt with.
It's called settlement in mining settlement. Okay, well, and your children are all around and you see them?
Yeah, I see all 4 of them. I've got my elder daughter was married just a few weeks ago.
Wow.
And I really,
What's her name?
Catherine.
Hello, Catherine.
And I made a speech, and I loved making speech. It was I was a very proud dad. In fact, sort of tears were coming down my face during the parts of the service.
But
some of the music.
But big boys don't cry.
No, I've learned to cry, and that's something else. I actually was meeting my other son a few weeks before that, when my other daughter was graduating from university, and we had a lovely chat in a pub, opened up in a way that we never have before.
So you became friends?
Yeah.
Like two adults?
And I could shed tears even in a pub, and he said, "Dad, you can't do that, we're in a pub." And I said, I can actually shed tears anywhere now. I've learned how to do this, and even he was very close to them.
My eldest son Shesh and I went to the General Medical Council for a crime I haven't committed, like give a sick note. And when they started questioning me, I said, "Please, you know my name, it's on the computer. Why do you want me to talk like a criminal?" I go straight for the jugular, Then they said, "What happened?" I said, "Do you know what it feels like taking the ashes of your own child to its mother, who is estranged from you, and there's a white woman married to you standing behind you?" And tears started flowing. My son started crying for the first time about his brother's death after I think 8 years. That's the first time he cried. That's one thing. And secondly, the Indian Prime Minister, a tough old bird called Narendra Modi, he's just all over the world.
Yes.
He's just, you must have heard about him. He was talking to Mark Zuckerberg.
Yes.
Mr. Facebook. And he first of all said, "Can you tell your parents to stand up, please?" And everyone clapped. He's honoring the parents. He said, "I'm so honored that your parents have produced such a child." And then I could see him choking. And he said, "My mother has brought me up. My father had died. But there are several mothers." But he just couldn't contain himself. Tears are flowing. So this is a male Indian Prime Minister who is so anglicized, even him, in the Western way, that big boys don't cry. But he did cry. And I'm so pleased he did, because he's setting an example for people.
I think that's so important.
Yes.
I learned this after my marriage broke up. After 25 years, I discovered real grief for the first time. When my father had died 10, 12 years before, I hadn't found tears. I was so repressed that I couldn't even find grief. But I did for my marriage, because it was so important to me. And realizing that this had broken really sort of split me up. And I found myself howling in tears in the shower at work, having cycled to work. And I just thought, I need some help here. I need to discover how to deal with this, because I'm feeling such raw emotion, which I've never felt before, because it's not that it wasn't there, I've just held it down so tightly. And
so there's that, not just catharsis, you're discovering the beauty of sadness.
Yes, there is real, and that's something that I've been working on recently, is that there can be a kind of joy in a whole range of feelings. If you feel them fully, there can be a joy in anger. If you're just allowing it to flow, there can be joy in envy when you see somebody else has got something. You think, I want that. There can be real joy in it if you allow it.
Fully acknowledge.
Absolutely.
They take the bull by the horn.
Yeah.
Isn't that called mindfulness in Buddhism?
Well, certainly mindfulness is, I think this is an aspect of it. I think it's got many names in many different traditions.
I think it's, sorry, go on. I was just going to say, I think it's the awareness of the emotion, rather than...
Fully aware.
Yeah, awareness of your feelings, without letting that emotion put you into situations that
where you're harmed, vulnerable,
or
abused.
other people.
Yes.
You've still got to control the emotion, but it's the awareness that you're having it and realizing the consequences and results of those emotions.
It's actually detaching behavior from emotion. We need to control our behavior. If we're feeling angry, we need to be careful what we do.
With whom?
But with whom?
But allow it.
But allow it. I'm absolutely with you, Glenn. You've got to let the emotion flow in you, because it's natural. Because if you don't, it'll get stuck. But if you allow it to flow, it passes out. All emotions, they're emotion.
Energy in motion.
Energy in motion, and they move. So it's really important to feel it, to think, okay, so how am I going to express this? And in a certain situation you may be able to express it, in others you actually think, right, I'm going to express it in a different way. I'm going to feel that I'm angry, and I can say to you, just at the moment I'm feeling really angry with you.
And that's far better than saying, who the hell do you think you are?
Exactly, and sort of starting to lose it and shout and stamp. But actually to own the fact that at the moment that's just how I'm feeling, and it's natural. We always feel if somebody
use humor, teasing yourself and the other person.
Humor can be really
powerful.
And the tone of voice, it matters such an awful lot when you're speaking. If you are emotionally feeling strong emotionally, if you express it too hard, then it puts the other person's back up, because they want to retaliate straight away.
Yes.
But if you control it, and speaking reasonably even, it might be a little bit louder or whatever, but you've got to be able to still control it, but allow it to happen, but as a,
and that can be heard by other people. Somebody else can hear
the vibrations.
If you say, look, I'm feeling really angry with you at the moment. If you start raging at them, everybody goes into defense. And
the barriers go up.
Absolutely, and it's a way of communicating without the barriers.
Often people have very powerful feelings. So like you said, instead of saying, Simon, I'm quite annoyed with what you did yesterday, and that has a very different feel from, who the hell do you think you are? It becomes a battle of egos.
Yeah, that's
especially with males, of course.
Yeah, males.
But women have a very, very nasty weapon. It's called the tongue. They can hurt you with the lash of the tongue.
The phone lines are open. If you think women have nasty tongue, speak to Glenn, because I think I have a worse tongue than
I think I'd like to gloss over that. Can you get the CD player to work? Because
lost in the sun, my pretty young one.
So we were finishing the story. So we were talking about the whole business of our parents. And Mark, you were saying, Simon rather, you were saying, we've got Mark in the studio, we'll introduce him in a minute. You were saying that you got to know your mother in the latter part of your life.
I did, just in the last few years.
Did that help you reach yourself, the soft part of you?
It was really important, because I'd been carrying anger towards my mum for most of my life, and that had really caused problems for my marriage. Because I really couldn't... you
had to take it out on your wife?
I did. I took out, and I didn't realise I was doing it, but actually some of my anger about women from my childhood.
It was anger with your mother?
It was anger with my mother because, and for me, she got dementia in the last few years of her life, and for me that was a real gift because she stopped disapproving of me. All my life, I'd made choices that she disapproved of. It was. But
your mother had to go nuts before you could.
Well, it's not nuts actually.
No, but close down.
No, she didn't close down. That's the lovely.
What
that
happened?
was a beautiful thing. She forgot the things that she thought were right. And then she was just in the present moment. So she became much more mindful by the fact that she was no longer judging me. And I could see when in the last few years when I went in to see her and she would look at me and I could see her brain working. Now, who is it? What didn't he do? Who didn't he marry that I think he should have done? And then she let go of it.
So the odds and the shoulds and the ifs and the buts and
all those went.
All those went.
And then we had a beautiful, a really lovely relationship for the last few years of her life. And it was a real gift for me. And I became very loving, she became very loving, and we really enjoyed each other's company in the last 2 years.
And Glenn, you were saying you had a similar journey.
Apart from that, my mother was always very gentle and understanding, and I had no problems with her at all. I was lucky in that respect. But I was brought up by women, and far too tender in the world. And one of the things that I find about this is that women assume that men pick up on the same vibrations as women. Women notice the small things and are interested in the relationships and the interplay between people, whereas men, at least certainly, I'm only talking from my own experience, tend to think, if a woman tells you, all right, this and that, and let your wife know, and then the men filter out the bits that are important to women.
Edit what's important.
They edit, and they tell the men
factual things.
Yeah, that's it. But they miss out the bits about, and he looked this way and he looked that way, and he
said this and she said this
and all that sort of thing, which is what women want to hear. And men assume that that's not important, but it is important to women.
In the company I keep, I find a lot of men behaving then totally like women. He said this, she said this, he said this. I find that totally upsetting.
I can't
cope with that.
No,
I haven't got time for that. I want to talk to you. I don't want to know what he said to her. I don't feel it's a kind of avoidance behavior. If I meet Simon and we talk about everyone else except Simon or Anand, then what's the point of that meeting?
I mean,
it's avoidance.
I think we just have different communication styles. Men and women learn to communicate really differently, and men learn to be kind of
direct.
Much more direct, but also to tell stories. And I was challenged recently by a woman saying a woman would never have got away with telling a story for that long because the way women communicate
have been brought up.
It's much more interplay of things.
Well, then we are all three women then. And let's bring the fourth one in. Mark, welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
You haven't heard the first part.
No.
So tell us about yourself a little bit, then we can interplay like women.
I don't think we're going to do quite that.
A bit about your background, your parental styles, where they were, where you were, where you felt hurt, just soft stuff.
Okay. Well, I was brought up by a naval family. And so there was quite a lot of moving around in the early years, and then I suppose you could say I was with a silver spoon in my mouth. Really, I was privileged, and money was always available, and all nice things were all available. I was sent off to boarding school when I was about 8.
How did that feel?
Well, I'm only just beginning to be able to answer that at the age of 65 or 67. I am now, because from that moment onwards, I just shut down. And went into what I think is sort of survival mode.
Exactly what we've been saying.
We have been talking about
exactly that. So boarding schools shut men down definitely.
It did, particularly in those days. I don't know. I haven't been to one recently, but they were about discipline, changing soft stuff into hard stuff, but surviving.
Because these men have to go to battle, they have to go and control India or Japan or China, producing civil servants.
No, so you're exactly right. I mean, they were set up for the empire, and that has carried on in many places. And in the 50s and 60s when I was there, it was still pretty brutal.
What, hitting the slipper and that kind of thing?
Oh yeah, and worse.
Caning.
Yeah, caning. And
Sexuality? Risk from the teachers?
No, there was one put in prison some years later.
Okay.
There was a paradox about the place, really, was that if you were caught in bed with a boy, that was okay. Caught in bed with a maid or a member of staff, you were in trouble, would be expelled.
The student would be.
Yeah.
And the staff wouldn't be.
No, but that's right.
Oh my God!
Well, the staff probably was as well, but it was telling us all about the curious business of what Catholic attitude had to women, and women. Blessed Virgin Mary is a virgin, which is crazy, and a school full of monks is crazy.
Yes.
And if you come from a family which is fairly militaristic and stoic, then it's quite difficult to get a line with the world when you leave.
Yes. Leave the confines of that very strict military discipline of Catholicism and military and the conquest of the empire and all that.
All the time, it's infiltrated with fear.
Yes.
Everything is happening.
So you're not working in love. You had been working in fear completely.
Fear. Everything's strategic.
Yes.
Planning.
Everything's strategic, fearful.
Wow.
What's the outcome here? How do I make sure I survive this? And it's.
We're laughing because we've all felt it. I felt it only for 10 months in my Catholic school. But just tell you a little bit about how I behaved. Once I was on a school trip, and it's a bogie coach for 36 adults, but there were 72 children in it. You do it on the cheap. So we're sleeping near the toilet and here and there. One priest took my suitcase out and started doing his prayer at 4 in the morning. So I got down at Higginbotham's. It must be some famous railway station caterer that your father and your grandfather would have done, Simon, in the Indian Railways, and got a book. I didn't know Sanskrit, So as the priest was doing Our Father who art in heaven, I was doing Om Bhurbhuva Swaha Saviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhiyo Yona Prachodaya. He said, what are you doing? I said, same as you, I'm praying. Now what can he say? So I learned to stand up to it, So the Catholic school, instead of crushing me, I mean, we've all given Bibles. We took the inserts out and kept the top cover for our diaries. We used to wash our hand in holy water. Because if you impose these kind of things, I have no problem with Jesus, but I have a big problem with Christians. It is that, isn't it? Follow ideas that Jesus gave. I mean, so unlike you, I survived that by just being, but then I became too rebellious. Even when there wasn't anything, I'm ready to fight.
I can see that in you.
You can still see that in me, yes. I'm a bit mischievous with it. I laugh it off now. So, Mark, then how did you come out of it? I mean, this has been a very tough journey for you.
Well, it was a difficult journey because I was living in a mask the whole time. There was no me. There was no essence of me.
Just a persona.
Just a persona which would be performing for whatever was necessary to perform. And I had a nice background, so that opened doors and so on and so on.
You got a nice accent as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So it all adds to that package.
That's right.
But where's the real Mark?
Absolutely. And that was hidden for too long. So I went into marriage, I went into alcoholism.
Wow.
And I suppose I've been clean now I haven't had a drink for 22 years.
Wow. Did you go to the AA?
I went to AA, I continued to go
because
to AA.
Whoever helps, I mean, I believe in the AA, it has helped a million people, millions of people.
Yeah. I wouldn't be here without it. I went into a clinic for 4 weeks and then was given clear direction, go to AA, go to meetings, pick up a phone, if you don't pick up a drink, and you'll be all right.
And you are?
Yeah.
So did that marriage work? Is it the same?
No, that failed.
Okay.
And then I was still not sorted out of my head, and I had another short marriage, and I've been now single for, about 15, 16 years with the occasional relationship. And as this subject is about relationships, I might have stopped drinking, I might still have got rid of some anger, but I didn't know where my anger was directed at, actually. And it took the start of a journey about 3 years ago when one of my friends in AA just said, well, you've got to get yourself sorted out. You're bursting at the seams. You're just so angry and distrustful of everybody. You're living, you're surviving, you do what you do, and you're nice and you smile and you're fairly humorous and all that. So and I was running a successful business and so on. So 3 years ago, in 2 weeks' time, I went on a course in Liverpool called The Awakening.
The Awakening.
Called The Awakening.
Mm-hmm. Is there a website?
There's a Clear Mind website.
Clear Mind website.
Clear Mind International in Vancouver. And I went on that, and I stood next door to a chap who opened his mouth and said, I want to kill myself. And I thought, God, what am I doing here?
I don't want to kill myself.
I don't want to kill
I don't
myself.
have that problem at least.
Or kill him.
But I couldn't speak about self. I was only interested in my children and distracting along the...
So you're living through other people.
Absolutely. And when I stood there that Friday night, they played some music, and I was like a statue. I couldn't move, just rigid. And on the Sunday night, they played other music, and I started to move my knees a bit. And so I was starting to
Get back.
something was vibrating
Yes,
inside me.
yes.
And then I've done a lot of work with that, and I've done work with Simon here, and it's all added up to, I can tell you a little bit about last weekend.
Please.
Where I think I heard some music. We were in a session, in a workshop, and I heard this music. How could anyone tell you you are less than beautiful?
Mm-hmm.
And I just started.
That hit you.
I just burst into tears.
Yes.
And I hadn't cried meaningfully, I think, for probably 60 years.
Oh my God! Wow.
You know, and it just
Wow.
poured out of me.
Wow.
And all I saw at the time was actually hanging on to somebody, hanging on to my mother. Please don't leave me. And so there was a mixture of anger and confusion,
fear of losing
fear
mom.
and also the tears for myself. But interspersed with my hands just gripped the person that was next door to me.
As if it was mom.
Yeah, and I was hanging on for dear life. So that's been a big opening this week. But it takes a lot of work.
But it was worth it.
Oh, absolutely.
As the L'Oreal ad says, because I'm worth it.
It was
It's a very trite advert, but it means so much.
It was a really good workshop, and that my partner Christina was co-leading, and I was part of the team running it. And it does allow for us to get back in touch with things we need to get in touch with, and it was just beautiful to see Mark actually really, for the first time, own that sadness, and it feels to me like something unlocked in you.
Oh, I think so. I think I've been suffering with a cold on the head, and I think everything's
That's all part of your body cleaning up.
Absolutely. So it's a
People just go and take paracetamol and Beecham's. Don't just suffer it, man. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
I got very severe shingles. I've had quite an interesting journey. I'll quickly tell you, in 10 years. My son committed suicide. I lost 500,000 pounds to Hunter Kane Limited. My wife left me. My father died. I lost my job because my partner complained to the GMC. And all this, all within a few years. But over time, I've not survived them. I've enjoyed them. Saying, come on, give me more. Come on, what are you going to do next? I'm talking to this chap called with a beard upstairs with blue eyes, Come on, what are you going to do next? And ultimately the fellow upstairs says, I've had enough, let the bugger live. and I honestly feel like that. And I've made my own journey through radio, and I'm in the Speakers Club, and I meet wonderful people like yourselves. Otherwise, one would play golf and buy a Sunday Mirror and have a little dog they walk and buy a bottle of milk. I find all that deathly killing, I would find that kind of... I'll be 69 on the 14th of October this year. But I dress young, I meet young people, I'm filming ourselves, So it is about romancing with life, isn't it? It's not just your wife, it's not just people. If you love yourself...
It's a relationship with yourself you have to start with.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You have to start there.
Exactly.
Self-respect.
Self-respect, self-love, enjoying yourself.
Yeah. You're finding joy in self.
Yeah. I think that's
and someone said, if you feel lonely when you're alone, you're with the wrong guy. Facebook is so full of altruisms, And this is a Swami, a Sadguru chap, and I find him fascinating. His English is quite good, and he says aphorisms like that, He says, if you sit by yourself and you don't like, you're the wrong guy.
I don't mind being alone, but I don't like being lonely.
Yes.
There's two different things.
Are you ever bored?
I haven't got time to be bored.
Exactly. So if you love yourself, you can't be bored because you're the right guy.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested in lots of things. Painting, woodwork, philosophy.
The chair Mark sits on.
You name it.
You repaired Mark's chair.
Oh yes.
He just all the way from Billingham.
Yeah.
All the way he brings screwdrivers, this and that. His whole toolkit fixes it.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I just mended another chair yesterday. It belongs to an old lady that my wife's known for 40 years. And she's a lovely lady, absolutely a miss, and she's 90 years old. And she has this wing chair, but it came apart and she nearly fell off it, because it's next to the phone where she
leans over each time.
over. And I mean, my stepdaughter lives next door to her and looks in and whatnot and keeps her whatnot. But she's got a bit of dementia. The short-term memory is just absolutely shot at, like mine.
Sorry, what did he say?
But it's just that sort of thing. It's fine if you can help somebody. I mean, all it is was just mending a few broken dowels and
but you're
squeezing it together.
But you're bothered to do it.
Well,
and you're compassionate enough.
Yeah, I think,
and you don't get a penny for it, but you have so much love for it.
Oh, she would probably offer me something like a £10 or £20, but just for doing it. But you know,
that
you try and refuse her, and she takes. But I didn't get any money for it.
No, that's what I'm saying. You don't want to degrade it by saying it's a commercial transaction.
No. But if somebody feels that that they want to give you something. Then there's got to be a balance in things, and the balance could be just very much gratitude, without it being in
financial terms.
But if they want to pay you for it, then fine, let them.
Don't spoil it.
Be a balance.
It's like a compliment, you know. If I give you a compliment, say you got a nice bush shirt, and you say thank you, that's all. When people came to my surgery that I expanded by 125%, 18A Elmfield Road, people say, "Oh, what a lovely surgery." I would say, "Wait till the curtains come." Why did I say that? Because I couldn't take a compliment. I had to put something negative.
Putting it down.
Or often, you know.
I want to do the next piece of music if I can. Can I introduce it before you play it?
Yeah, please.
Because it's about the masculine role, and what Glenn was saying really reminded me of that. About having to take care of the family and do what needs doing, but at the expense of feelings. There's a really good last line, if you listen for it, about the frustration. So it's Jack of All Trades by Bruce Springsteen.
Powerful words there. Jack of all trades, master of.
Well, master of whatever he needed to be to survive. But the song ends with him saying, "If I'd shoot them all down." He's got the real frustration that he's having to cope and survive, but actually he's not feeling properly fulfilled. And I love Bruce Springsteen's the kind of, he brings a really strong masculine quality, and so that's a track which really moved me when I first heard it in the car. I was it really touched my heart. Oh goodness, I can. It's
very masculine, but there's a softness in it.
There is.
Is it different from "I saw the night as I passed by the window, and she was no more"? You know, what does that song mean? Does it mean I killed her?
Yeah, I don't know.
Delilah.
That one.
I don't know the words. So.
And she was no more. I mean, I saw the night in the light as I passed by the window, and so on. Because I thought that means if you're not mine, you can't be anybody else's.
I have a feeling.
I have a feeling
that meaning. But I don't think I ever picked up on it when I was listening to it 30, 40 years ago.
Okay.
I tend to listen to the music, not the words.
Yeah. Okay. Well, same happens to me. The tune gets me and I forget the words. Yeah. Okay. So tell us a bit more how you you were talking about how you went into, then your marriage broke up, Simon, and suddenly you realized, oh God, a tsunami.
Indeed, a huge tsunami of feelings, and that I needed to cope with.
How did you cope?
I got some help, and again, that's something that men don't often do. But I found a counsellor, and
how did you find a counsellor?
I went on the web and looked it up, thinking I need to talk to somebody. I've got these feelings, I don't know how to let them out. And there was a list of counsellors, and I kind of thought, that one looks quite nice, perhaps I'll give her a ring. And for 3 years I went most weeks to actually just talk and explore.
How did that feel, talking to a woman about feelings that you may not have done before? Because she was your mother figure.
No, I actually I could relax quite quickly.
But that's her skill.
But it was her skill. But there weren't any male counsellors out there. And what I've learned since in the men's group, I've been going to men's group for the last 5 years, is that there's actually something really valuable in sharing with other men.
That has its own beauty.
It does, and it has a slightly different quality. And if I'd known, I'd have actually, I think I'd have wanted to see a man, but I don't think I was ready to actually talk to a man at that stage. But what I'm trying to offer now is a service where men can talk to me, because I've been there. I've done quite a lot of training since then, and creating a safe environment to actually explore what's going on
without your personal hang-ups coming on the table. The counsellors.
Indeed, I need to own what's going on for me, but not interject
at the expense of the client.
Oh yes, that mustn't get in the way. But if I notice something's happening in me in a response, I can choose, do I say something or not? And very often it won't be appropriate, but sometimes it can be helpful just to illustrate.
Because at
something.
some points you forget who's the counsellor, who's the counsellee. Who's the thief, who's the policeman?
I think what's really important is that you build up a bond of trust. And dare I say it, love.
Of course.
In the session. That's really important, and that is two-way.
But not necessarily carried outside of it.
No, but
that's what people are scared of.
The skill is in actually creating that space, bringing in sort of information understanding which is helpful for people to give them a wider perspective on things or things that they haven't known before.
An expression comes to mind: set a thief to catch a thief, because unless you've actually
suffered yourself,
exactly, then you can't have the compassion in the same way. I don't think you can know about it. You can intellectually know, but it doesn't feel the same inside. You've got to have somebody who's been through it, who really knows how you feel through those circumstances.
I find a lot of psychiatry like that. I call it Teflon psychiatry, because there's no feeling in the psychiatrist. I've seen psychiatrists through the GMC thing. My people were very, very good, because I worked in the drug industry myself as a doctor.
Right. Yeah.
So I can sense some people. I can just open my heart and say anything. They're like my friend, my father figure, my guru, whatever. And some I have to only say this but not tell him about that, and tell her about this but not about that. That's not empathy,
No,
and as a counselee, I feel very annoyed to be stuck with some people like that.
Yeah.
So it is important to love and be one. Otherwise, there's no exchange, is there?
I agree. You've really got to be in touch with yourself if you're doing this work.
And forgive yourself.
Yes, indeed. And I know my limitations, that there are things I do wrong. And if I can own them, or things that aren't going so well, but I also bring huge skills. And I need
tell us about skills.
Own all of myself.
How did you go about all this business? Your marriage broke up, you're in tears, you got a counselor for 3 years. How did the idea come that I could do the same, help other people, men in particular?
I think part of my journey was meeting my current partner, Christina.
Who I know from Health 2000.
You do.
I'm from 1998.
3 weeks after I met her, I was on a workshop.
I've known her for 17 years.
With a guy called Christian Pankhurst,
which
happened in your home.
Yes, yes.
And this was just after I'd met her. The only time he ever ran a workshop in Newcastle.
Okay.
And I went there, and I got in touch with some aspects of my masculinity that I had never got in touch with before.
Right.
And that started a journey. Training with him and doing other training. I trained as an executive coach, but I've done this work in what we call heart intelligence. And that's about getting in touch with the whole range of who you are, the light parts and the dark parts, and knowing yourself, and
acknowledging them, and even enjoying them,
and welcoming them.
Yes.
Absolutely. So all these different aspects, because it's a huge part. So I've been on this journey with my relationship with Christina, and it's really helped me in my personal development.
It sounds quite exciting, because your relationship is where you're growing.
It is.
You're not two codependent people with rules. You do this, I do that. You shop on Sunday, I cook this, I do this. A lot of people live by rules, and that's fear, as Mark was saying.
Yeah, and
instead of the freedom
I was
to enjoy.
Very codependent for a long time. I don't know if others were, but certainly I know I was.
Yes, I think that's right. I was. It was just the background, the norms that I'd been shown, It didn't feel like codependency.
No,
but
no, it
probably
felt right.
was. It felt normal, but it clearly, when you study it now, when I study it now, of course it was.
When you step out of it,
Yeah.
and then you can look at it,
Yeah, that's right.
and even now talk on radio about it.
Well,
No, but I think that takes a lot of emotional courage, you know. It's easy to go into battle and shoot people. It's much harder to accept your tears of who you've shot. I mean, I've been to Palestine for 6 days. It's just very moving, you know, how people are abused. And I find it very difficult. Even on YouTube and all, people put pictures of heads being cut off. How do they show these things, you know? I just won't watch, you know, because I'm participating.
yeah.
You know, it's
I
important
agree.
to know a little bit, but actually to be leering at it and enjoying. It's like pornography, watching people's heads being cut off, Muslims cutting the heads of Christians live. It's, and vice versa.
I've never watched anything like that.
I just scroll down. I can't abuse myself. So you have to become sensitive, isn't it?
Yes.
And as a doctor also, it's very important, you know. You couldn't be a shipman if you had some feelings, you know. He must have shut a lot off to be able to go to people's home and inject them and kill them. I mean, but he's got the facility to so do, being a doctor. And look what he's done to the whole General Medical Council. Every doctor is scared of all sorts of things now, writing everything down just because of one guy. So where do you think the profession and a profession means society is giving the permission to be yourself and trust you.
Yeah.
And then there's a council that checks on you. There's quite a imbalance there, isn't it?
I think, I mean, everybody's got to behave. If you're in any sort of helping profession, behaving professionally is really important. So you've got to, there have to be safeguards and so forth. But I think there are ways to be yourself in spite of them, and you actually need to be careful.
To be a good teacher despite Ofsted.
Well, exactly.
To be a good doctor despite GMC.
I've got a friend who's a teacher, and she. What she wanted to do was to really bring out of the children what they had inside them.
Yes.
That's true teaching. That's true education.
Educare, to lead out.
But a lot of her time she felt she was fending off the requirements, the Ofsted regime, just to be able to do that. And eventually she got really tired, and she went into a specialist sector with disabled children, because
then she's allowed to be herself. And
she was finding that less stressful than the mainstream teaching. But I think it is sad when regimes are so kind of protective that they don't allow
common sense.
They don't allow sort of real relationships to develop. And that's where the work is done.
I went into a school in Lofeld with my guru to do music, and within 3 seconds a child was crying. He just started singing. So I took him aside with the teacher's permission and said, "What's the matter?" He said, "Mum and Dad have split up." And I told the teacher, she says, "For 3 weeks we've noticed that his homework is failing. So we were going to talk to him. But it can be a bit like your music, Mark. And that's Indian classical music, nothing to do with that what that child knows. But, you know, feelings are reached. And I was so happy for that child that he could actually express himself. And I gave him a hug, which would be contrary to rules and regs now. For God's sakes, why can't I hug a kid, you know? You can't take a photograph of your own child in a swimming pool, even if only you and your child is there.
Really?
Yes?
Extraordinary.
But who are these idiots who make the rules? For whom?
I know it's ridiculous. But
It always brings us down to the lowest common denominator.
Yes,
that's right.
Instead of elevating us to what's best.
Exactly, Yeah. I was just looking at this business about the theme, the masculine role. Because I think a lot of it is a misconception about what a masculine role is.
What's your view?
Well, as I've said before on the programme, male and female have different roles, and it's when the two are complementary and they mesh together so that you have respect for the other role, which is tending, caring, looking after, general, that sort of aspect of life. And the masculine role is more of a rougher, more earthly, protective, if you like, because generally speaking, a man feels protective towards the female sex. But I think it's been distorted into this business where the male is the stronger sex, which isn't true. It's supposed to be an equal balance, but you've got to have a realization of the two different roles and one respective of the other, in its purest sense. But this is, I think, a confusion that's arising at the moment between different roles, where it's okay to be feminine as a masculine. I think the thing is, it's not so much feminine as a realization of a feminine role, that there is femininity in a different aspect to life than just the masculine, and that it is not a stronger role where it's a dominating role.
Well, it shouldn't be, but I think that confusion, that there has been dominance.
Yes, I think
and
for a long time.
And that makes a problem. But I certainly feel that there is something masculine, protective, just as you were saying, Glenn, and a holding.
Yeah.
But there is actually a huge power in the feminine,
Oh, yeah,
which is
absolutely.
really something really centred in a way that I think we all have masculine and feminine in us. Men and women both have both traits to some extent. You can see you disagree.
Yeah.
I feel strongly that we actually have access to it all. I'm more masculine. There are some men who are even stronger masculine. Some women who are very feminine or less in their feminine. But there are different balances in different people that I observe.
Can't you be a high feminine and a high masculine as well?
But I think so.
There are people like that.
I think that's right. But it's really important to actually own what's going on for you. And for me, the masculine protective aspect is really important, and it is a natural thing to be protective of one's children. That role that Bruce Springsteen was singing about was actually, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. It was that
It's
kind of reassurance.
The old-fashioned meaning of husband.
Yeah, it was husband.
Is to look after.
Yes.
To look after, to gather
But it shouldn't become animal husbandry.
Oh no!
You're not married to a cow, but you're looking after.
No,
it.
exactly.
But you're herding the
it's
cow.
respect for each other's roles, really, and to
Okay, shall I throw a
understand
spanner in the works? In my house, I've got a statue. The only statue Hindu thing I have is Ardhanarishwari. Half the body is Shiva and half is Parvati. Half and half. So I am both.
Well, they certainly in Greek, that the idea of the hermaphrodite is really quite a strong tradition. That there is that blend of masculinity and femininity in all of us, and in each it shows up differently. But what's important is to know what you are, to actually claim all those
No, I'm quite an
parts.
alpha male because I'm short man syndrome. But I'm also very, very soft. I'll give anything away to someone who needs it.
Yes,
Very, very soft side of
you're
me.
in touch with both aspects.
And I'm
of
saying
yourself.
both are very powerful.
No,
and
I
I have to be
can see
careful
that.
not to cheat myself by being too feminine and not to hurt by being too masculine. Because, I feel that women react by getting depressed and men react by getting angry. Women take the anger in and men take the anger out, generally speaking.
Generally, but I was one of the people who actually tended more to get depressed by
Yes, you were excessively feminine, what do you say?
holding my anger in. Yes, I had a much stronger feminine than masculine as I was growing up, much stronger.
What do you say, Mark, to all this?
Well, I think I was probably frightened, actually, listening to that from Simon. I was probably frightened as I grew up of being soft, but knowing I had it. I remember once somebody came to the door at about 8 o'clock at night. It was a beggar. And we
Here in Britain?
Yeah, and we were living in the country and there was no houses nearby. And I gave him a 10-shilling note. Well, people won't remember what 10-shilling notes are. And I felt really good about that. I just had it in my pocket.
Yeah.
And that would be deemed to be soft. Somebody else would have said, throw him out or whatever. And I couldn't do that. So I've always had this conflict of wanting to do the kind thing. And yet my upbringing in large part has
You should
been...
be unkind.
Be unkind, be tough, be solid,
Yes.
decisive,
Yes.
and don't procrastinate.
All macho. Men are from Mars, women are from
That's
Venus
right.
kind of thing.
And I think that's taken a long time to start to unravel, I think, and to accept as we are of these two parts, and we can celebrate them. And our partners of any sexuality is about celebrating the other.
Because we choose people who have a bit of us, isn't it? The yin yang, the black fish has a white eye and the white fish has a black eye. Because a cat and a dog can't mate. So if I don't have any femininity, I won't be attracted to a woman at all.
But why should anybody think that masculinity cannot be soft?
Well, I mean,
Good point.
I think there can be a softness in masculinity.
Exactly.
And there can be a toughness in femininity.
Yeah, it's how it's expressed. And I think that's...
But isn't that culturally and religiously determined and geographically?
Well,
When I see Albanian girls car washing here, just like any other bloke, and repairing tractors, I'm a wimp compared to them.
Yeah, but I don't think that's necessarily a correct activity for a female, because I know I'm going to get criticism for that, but the thing is that because women are more in tune with the higher vibrations of spirituality, they are able to tune into things farther than the man.
I challenge any woman to be as aspirant of higher qualities as me. Any woman, bring them on.
Okay.
Well, no, I really believe that I'm as spiritual as any woman on the planet.
Well,
I think I'd agree with Anand there.
Sorry, but
not necessarily about him, of course.
Otherwise, I'd be a guru.
Right. Well, I'm being
be controversial.
drowned out there. But
No.
Nevertheless,
say it. Please say it.
They are able to. You only have to have a look at a woman's intuition. And she'll be... I'm talking about a proper woman.
He's looking at me. I'm not a proper woman. Okay.
A proper woman that has... that's not leaning towards a masculine activity.
A really
it's the type
softy.
Of
Yeah.
I'm talking about the purity of womanhood, who is able to reach into the higher level. But she passes that down to the male, who then expresses it in the material form, because he's built more that way into the earthly. He's more earthly compact. If you look at women's bodies, they're softer.
But I agree there's a polarity. I definitely agree with your polarity. It's just how much intermingling there is where we probably differ.
If you look at the type of people who... a male who indulges in feminine activity or a woman who indulges in male activity, and you look at the distortions that happen because of that, because they are not acknowledging the true nature of their persons inside.
They're not comfortable in their roles.
Yes, right. you need to be comfortable in your own body, in your own role. I agree with that.
And if you look over the generations, a male spirit who is leaning towards a feminine in his next incarnation could be incarnated as a woman, but with a man's spirit inside.
So he's yearning to become a woman.
Which is where you get lesbianism and homosexuality.
In both cases, there's always a masculine type and a feminine type in women as well, and men who are gay. And we were discussing the word gay this morning.
That's right, yeah.
If two men are gay and they're in a relationship, sexual relationship, one is the dominant, one is the... So that polarity is necessary, otherwise it's boring.
Yeah, no, polarity is necessary, it's boring. I want to put on the next piece of music. Can I introduce it first?
Yes,
before
of course.
You actually play it? But it is another aspect of this.
Okay.
And it's an aspect of being a dad and how you pass on your masculinity to your son.
Wonderful.
So it's Mark Knopfler, and it's a track called Cannibals.
And
another one.
And thank you, Christine, for making this track, because it works on my computer, whereas the company-made one doesn't.
Oh, right.
So what do you think of all this, Mark? The masculine role, the feminine role. We've heard my views, we've heard Simon's views, and we certainly heard Glenn's very strong views about men and women are different. What do you make of all that? Are you confused, or are you sure of?
I think I'm less confused than I used to be as a young man in a dominantly male, locked up in a male school. It was a bit confusing as one explored one's adolescence. And I remember being quite a mod. I like to dress quite.
Oh, really?
Yeah, quite prettily.
Bell bottoms and all that.
Yeah,
Italian pointy shoes,
pink shirts.
Or just break the rules. Yes.
Yeah, and my parents, of course, were just horrified. My father was, but my mother actually was half French, so she was quite interesting.
That she herself was exploring her own.
She wouldn't talk about anything, but she would allow.
Yeah. More expressions of her rebelliousness.
Yes, well, she ran away from a convent, I think, at 14.
Oh, right.
Oh, we all should, but carry on.
So it's all in
a convent that you have to be a nun.
No, she was there being educated.
Be educated, okay,
yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But it was always interesting when young women came to stay, She got on immensely well with them and was on first names, which
So
was very unusual in those days.
In those days, yes.
It would be very formal.
No, but she wasn't.
She just wasn't, and so she could relate to young people enormously. But I think I heard when I came in, Simon was talking about his mother, and I think I held for all my life, and maybe this last weekend, that's starting to ease, this anger of perhaps being sent away to boarding school, or something happened at an earlier age when she was travelling and leaving me behind or something. And
like the sense of abandonment.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I feel that now talking about it. It's actually
So talk about it. Tell us.
so it's slightly tearful, really, which I would never have acknowledged, and I've always considered that to be the female side of it. But it doesn't necessarily. It's just being honest to myself. If that's how I'm feeling, feeling tearful or nervous about something or irritated about something, then I need to say that. I've learnt that in my new relationship, and which has been a real process of development and learning.
So how's this relationship different?
It's more honest.
Okay.
It's more honest. It's more giving time to express how one feels, to build the safety of not to be challenged in fear, to be accepted, however fuddled or muddled or.
It's okay.
It's okay, and that's taken a while to learn that, or to get better at it, and it's always a relief when one actually does that.
I can see the relief on your face.
It's always such a relief when you
Yes.
you would actually get something out in the open, which has been bugging one for a while.
Yes. It's like Oprah Winfrey, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like all these people who've been hurt by some method and feel angry with their parents for not having protected them.
Yeah, but until you find out what it is,
Yes.
it is. I've always described it as sort of reacting to things
Yes.
rather than responding to things.
Yes.
So
So you're like a victim of your feelings rather than a master.
Yes, I don't really like that word of being a victim, but I'm at the consequence of my feelings, which I don't feel or have not felt for a long time, and that's nice now. Just to change that way of operating is to recognise how I feel, and I then have a choice to react, reload, or I can respond.
So you feel the master of all you survey, really, because you're the locus of control of your life.
Yeah,
You're the maker of your universe.
yeah.
Which most people don't acknowledge. They feel like victims of society, victims of their religion, victims of the culture, victims of the country of origin, victims of their postcode or whatever.
I think I did play a victim for a lot of my life, and it didn't do me any good at all. It just stuck me.
Yes, you stay stuck.
And you say it's rather like you end up with a resentment, which is rather like a cancer stuck inside you.
Emotional social cancer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're then evidence gathering, looking all the time to find something that suits your argument.
Exactly.
Yeah, it proves it for you.
It's
called editing.
Reinforces
It's
it.
called
Justifying it, yeah.
in editing in neuro-linguistic programming.
Okay. Right.
You either delete or edit to keep on track of your own belief system, because changing belief is stepping outside your map.
Yeah.
You should look at NLP a little bit, You'll really enjoy it.
NL.
Neuro-linguistic programming.
Right. Okay.
I've got your email. I'll put you in touch with the best. Have you ever heard of Matt Hudson?
No, I haven't.
He's written a book called The Saboteur Within, and in the
Right.
front of the book there's a mirror.
Lovely.
He's just a Geordie, but I believe he's the best therapist in the country, at least. If
Well,
not-
I went on a workshop this time last year about boarding school survivors.
Boarding school survivors.
Yeah.
Is that a Facebook page or is it a
Yeah,
real?
there is. I don't think it has Facebook, but it has a website.
Okay.
Boarding school survivors.
Wow.
Put on by a chap Nick Duffield, who wrote a book called The Making of Them.
Mm.
And when I read that book, I suddenly realised there's me.
And you've given me the book to me, and I'm still reading it.
I tick page after page, line after line. And one of the fellows there had access to whatever he needed to have money or whatever, and he was flying over to a professor in Harvard to get his brain reprogrammed, just what you've described.
Oh, right.
And I thought, how could you do that?
Yeah, you can.
You can. So
The brain, I'm to quickly put a bit of medicine in because I used to be a doctor. If you look on the YouTube called hemispherectomy, there's a girl who about 30 years ago had such severe epilepsy that the consultant removed 47.5%, half her cerebrum, half. And she walked out. She got a bit of a weak hand. She does ballet. She's married. She's passed her school. So all this bunkum about the brain doesn't repair. It's all nonsense, And we don't even know if the brain works here or it's connected to ether.
well,
Where is memory? Is it in the brain? We don't know.
I came across an interesting figure the other day where it said that of all the communications between the mind and the heart, 80% start in the heart.
Yes, it's called heart math. You could look up heartmath.org.
Anand, you're talking about all these different disciplines, and I agree that all of them have value, but the one that I think I've learned in heart intelligence brings in aspects of all these different things. And I think there are many different routes that overlap and bring much of the same understanding.
The spirit is actually connected to the body through the solar plexus, which is often confused with the heart, because it's the solar plexus is about there.
Heart is just
and that's why people think with your heart. In actual fact, you're thinking with your spirit.
With your gut, with your spirit, with the third chakra. So all this wisdom is there. I think you need to go, you were saying, but I'll play a little song for you. So that's lovely, Mark, and what a journey. I mean, it's just amazing, the honesty and the truthfulness. You created a course, an e-book, haven't you?
I have, yes.
It's Creating the Life You Long For.
That's right.
So in a sense,
by building great relationships.
Yes.
And for me, it's actually one of the joys of life is having a deep relationship, because our partner becomes like a mirror to us. We actually become more of ourselves in relation to somebody else.
Yes. That's a good relationship is.
In a good
and a growing.
Yes.
Whereas codependency is the opposite. I'll see how I can control you. You see how you can control me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You can't go out on Saturdays. I won't cook the meal on Sundays. It's negative. Would you agree with that?
Oh yes, definitely. I mean, it is as I said before, a complementary thing.
Yes.
What you lack in your makeup is made up by the other person,
and you're learning,
and so you're respecting that.
Yes.
And you're both working together as a unit, because the human beings are a split species, male and female, positive and negative, without the negative meaning detrimental.
Yeah. It's like electrons and protons.
So it's only when the two mesh together properly
then
that
something
you
will
become
happen.
Something proper, and you can find. I mean, people go to the far ends of the earth to find somebody that they can live with. Find somebody with faults that they can live with.
Yes.
But there will be somebody reasonably close to. If you put out your thoughts in the right way, in a pure way, you will find somebody reasonably close who is a match for you.
There's a very famous Urdu saying, "Jisko dhoondha gali gali, wo ghar ke pichwade mein mili." Who I looked for, every lane, every road, every pathway, I found her in my backyard.
Yeah, exactly. Because you send out the vibrations, the thoughts, and they go and connect with similar thoughts. So somebody who's looking for the type of person that you are, your thoughts connect first.
So you didn't have to go on Facebook or go on dating sites. You just came to Chris Pankhurst's thing, and there we are.
Well, no, I'd met her actually at a dance camp 3 weeks before that. But it was when we went to the
dance camp for women or men.
It was a dance camp for men and women.
Oh.
In the Dances of Universal Peace,
which Christine does.
Which Christina leads, using mantras from all the different spiritual traditions.
She does
many Sufi ones.
Yes.
And in a dance circle, we met up at the end of the evening, and we'd just talked earlier that day, and I felt this physical energy that I'd never felt in my life before when I sort of put my hand on her arm.
It was the stirrings of your kundalini, my child.
It could have been. It probably
but
was.
As Glenn was saying, that person has triggered off something in you. So there's something in that person that she needed to trigger off, and you needed to be triggered with. Isn't it? It's a complementary. Exactly what you're describing.
It happens automatically, so long as you can recognise it.
Yeah. No. Well, I didn't know what was happening, but I thought, whatever this is, it's
good. Yeah.
It's good. I want more of this.
You felt like tasered.
it was rather like that. Although I've never been tasered.
No.
What I imagine tasering is like, but only a slightly more comfortable version.
I was told by a medium who my next wife would be, and she described her.
Really?
And where I would meet.
Really?
Yep.
And I think people have access to these areas we don't know much about. So we poo-poo them and laugh at them. But I've seen lots in India, and this horoscope and all that. I've seen it work. I've got a fellow in the studio, he's 35 years old, he's now in Manchester. He didn't divide you into 12 houses. He would put this and that, and he calculated that the human population is 7.5 billion. and he had about 75 billion ways of how his analysis would work. So there's many-fold more houses than people. But we like the cheap, quick McDonald kind of palmistry and astrology. 12 houses, Russell Brand or Hardy or whatever his name is. Who's that fat little thing? Who does it in the paper? And so we take the, it's a bit like Western medicine. We take out all the juice out of it. And, you take digitalis and just take the digoxin out of it. And so on. So we don't have that capacity to see the whole spectrum. We have to analyze and paralyze and take the bits, very macho masculine thing.
With this business of astrology, the trouble is that there is nobody who can take, because it isn't just the vibrations from the stars which channel the karma towards us. It could, if they're just looking at the material sort of things and that sort of thing, it doesn't take into account a person's vibrations.
So it's interactivity.
Interactivity. So what can be foretold by certain stars can be totally negated by
your own persona.
By your own persona. And so it's so unreliable. It can be a general, very general sort of a thing, but it can lead somebody, if they're dependent upon this astrology business, which they shouldn't be.
So it's called dependency, just like alcohol or drugs.
Exactly, yes. And they're not using their own spirit to decide for themselves. That's why we're here, to be able to choose to make decisions and learn in the process.
And getting in touch with my energy and my insight has been an important part of my journey.
Empowered.
Yes.
Because here you say a positive relationship with yourself. That's the first thing you say, Simon.
I do.
And then you say a good understanding of relationships generally. So first I love me. Love thy neighbor as thyself.
Yes.
So the Bible says love yourself first, then a good understanding of dynamics, skills for successful communication. Okay, I understand me, I understand you, but how do I interact? The third one. And of course you need guts, courageous heart. You said the third chakra, what do you call, solar plexus, and the heart, they're very close. And the heart is not really on the left side. If you see it entomologically, God, I'm getting drunk.
Entomological.
It's catching. We all know what you mean.
So it started here in the center. The neural tube was in the center, and then it moves away. So you feel heart pains in the center of the body, though the heart is on the left side for most people.
Certainly.
So they're all very close.
In practices, I do some Sufi practices, and there you
put your hand in the middle.
Put your hand in the middle.
Not over the thumping pump on the left side.
No, it's the energetic heart in the center, which is again really
so
important.
Sufi, yoga, they all connect, because they didn't have axe to grind. They're spiritual people, and they saw good in each other, whether it's Chinese or Indian or Mexican or Sufi. They didn't care which brand of religion or faith it came from.
The truth is the truth. It doesn't matter what you could label it as.
Yes, exactly. But then we get so cultured by misogyny and encouraged by religion. We get encultured by what food we eat, encouraged by religion. What clothes we wear, encouraged by religion. So we get stuck in our ways.
I think that getting stuck is a real problem. But actually, when we return to the core of these religion things, love is the thing that's at the centre.
That's all it's about.
And I wonder if we can play the next track, which is Absolute Beginners by David Bowie, which is about, for me, the power of love to make us all absolute beginners in our relationship and exploring ourselves in our partner.
So, Simon, you were saying you found that there are 5 things needed to create a positive relationship with yourself. One is allowing yourself to feel.
Yes.
That is the nub of it, isn't it?
It is really important.
Just letting your hair down.
It's actually accepting I've got feelings.
Yes.
And women know they have feelings.
They're allowed more.
Men often don't.
Yes.
And it's actually getting in touch with it and just thinking, well, it's natural. I'm a human being. I'm going to feel envious at times when I see somebody's got
angry.
something that I want, or angry.
Yes.
I'm going to feel sad. I'm going to
jealous.
feel jealous, joyful, all these different things. I'm going to feel
and acknowledge
it and think actually it's natural and it's not a defect in me. And that's the masculine role has often been to kind of think, no, it's defective if you feel.
But you're not Alexander going to conquer the world. Why should you not be soft?
Well,
You're not Genghis Khan. Why should you not be soft?
but even if you are going out to conquer the world, it's really important to know what you're feeling.
Well, look at Winston Churchill. I read his story of him pining for his mother who lived in America, and he was sent to boarding school. And I actually wept, 7-year-old child crying for his mother.
Yeah.
You might have a cigar and all that, and I wish I'd fight them onto this. But there's a little baby inside. The second thing you say, accepting your vulnerability. What does that mean?
Well, that's accepting that sometimes you don't feel strong.
And I'm beat, and I'm weak, and I've lost the plot.
Yes,
And it's okay.
It's okay to need
To be needy emotionally.
Yeah, when my marriage broke down, and I was needing support, I needed this counsellor, and I'd never asked for help before. Men are notoriously.
So you could go to alcohol.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Or you could go to working excessively hard.
Absolutely, different people may go into an addiction of different kinds just to try and
Keep the balance of the old stuff.
Numb the feelings.
Yes.
Numb the feelings, numb the pain.
And carry on the old style.
But this is actually accepting I'm feeling weak at the minute and I need some help. Or I need.
But it's only strong men who can say I'm weak today.
Exactly so. It doesn't mean giving up strength. In fact, it's stronger to be able to say at times I need a hug.
Yes.
I need some support.
Yeah.
I need and that's
Most
something
people-
that I really didn't know before.
Most people hug, men in particular, hug for 3 seconds. But if you hug someone for 20 seconds, you get a lot of relief.
the endorphins.
Endorphins start coming up.
And I'm certainly that's something else I've learned in the last 7-8 years. I love long hugs, and I will really have a very long hug. Up
Well, in
a
the
minute.
Pakistani culture, it's very popular.
Is it?
Yes.
Right.
So on Thursday when I go, I'm sometimes saying, what the hell is he hugging me this long for? What does he want, like? Has he got my hand in my pocket, like? Okay.
The thing that, sorry,
Go on.
just something
Please,
that passed through my mind while you were saying that was that all these pressures especially have an effect on your sleep, on your being, and you find yourself not being able to get off to sleep because the mind is turning over and you can't switch it off.
The biggest enemy, the monkey mind.
Indeed.
You know, and I found that quite a lot, and a lot of that is my own fault. Procrastination, putting things off, putting.
If you can't do it, just do it.
Yeah, putting off doing something about it. Even if it's taking a small step about doing something, it doesn't matter. You're not going to climb the mountain straight
one
away,
day, no.
but take a step, and you'll feel an awful lot better, and you'll be able to get a bit more sleep at night as well.
When people say, as a doctor, I've heard a lot of this, I wish, I say, stop. Do it. I don't want to know what you wish. I want to see it in action. Just do it. Just take one step. Some fellow wanted to go fishing.
Yeah.
He said, I haven't got the money. I said, have you got a magazine? A second-hand magazine even, which costs nothing, about fishing. Start reading about it. Because in Vietnam, there was this fellow, American guy, who was just locked up for 5 years. He took a piece of wood, drew all the frets on it, and pretending he was playing the guitar.
Yeah.
And within a week, he was on the stage when he returned to the States, when he was let off. So,
Because you're putting
can-
the thoughts out, you
Yes,
see.
yes.
You're putting those thoughts out which connect with others, which interconnect, and eventually, if you put out the right thoughts in the right way for long enough, it will happen in a material sense.
It'll radiate into...
You will be
equal-
given the opportunity.
Yes, the masses move for
Yeah.
satisfying the energy.
It's all movement.
The third one you're saying is being okay on your own.
Yes. Now, this is something which was a real revelation to me. And it comes back to this thing about being solitude and actually being okay with that,
Yeah.
and not being needy of somebody else to fix me. And I think for my former marriage, I expected my ex-wife to fix me, that it was her job to make me feel okay, and that is not the basis for a good
So
relationship.
you were married to Mrs. Quickfit.
Well, no, she wasn't, because it
No,
didn't,
but that's
it
what you
didn't work
expected.
out. When I'd started my relationship with Christina, quite soon I was starting to lean on her.
Just the same. In the past.
It was a habit
same,
I had.
yeah.
It was what I brought. And she suddenly said, "Hang on a minute. If you need me to feel okay with yourself, this relationship isn't going anywhere."
So how
And
did
it
you
was a
express that neediness? Did you keep phoning her, texting her all the time?
I
wonder how you are. Are you all right?
I think it was that, and asking her to soothe me. I mean, not directly.
No, but how did you express that soothe me syndrome?
It was. Oh, I can't. I'm trying to picture.
I mean, if she's
what
running
it
a
was.
workshop in Bristol, would you keep hounding her with texts to see how she was?
I was certainly.
Well, really what you're saying is
sending a lot of texts,
which means please listen to me.
Yeah.
When we pick up a phone and say I'm wondering how you are, that person is actually when my mother died, 2 women phoned me, or I was in the studio and they phoned, or something they phoned. I've forgotten now, and they said, "Oh, you lost your mother." I said, "Yes, I have." Keeping my tone upbeat. You must be feeling dreadful. I said, "Yes, I do." You know, like keeping the tone alive.
Yeah.
I lost my mother. I said, "Yes, you have. Tell me more about it." And it works, you know, because people want to pull you down to their level. If I'm coping and happily, my mother and I had a very good time last 7 years. I mean, I replaced her husband, who was totally into her. I wasn't that into her, but I was still around. Are you all right? If I had a computer editing to do, I'd sit next to her and do it with my laptop. So I enjoyed the last 7 years. Now she's gone. What's there to cry about? I got the best out of her compared to all my siblings. And I had the opportunity to serve her, which is so easy in Britain anyway. You have to organize things. I didn't have to physically clean her up or anything. But systems came. So anyway, so it's being with yourself.
It's being...
I used to play the flute, I used to play the guitar, I used to play the banjo. These were my solitude of discovering me. Then I became a doctor, and then it's yak, 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 yak all the time. But now while I'm editing, and there's some music going on, that's when I'm with myself. Yeah. So in the editing is the storyline, and I say I'll edit this, and I'll get more out of it there than here. I'm in the moment, so I'm not really acknowledging what's going on because I'm in the swimming pool. But when I'm editing, I'll be watching every little body nuance of mine as I'm doing this, or what you are doing, the eyes, and I watch all the micro expressions that people have. I'm watching you, but I can see his lips moving. So he wants to. So it's that. But I totally believe in Ubuntu. You know, the human connectedness. I don't want to be a Mowgli stuck or Robinson Crusoe.
It's not about being independent. It's not about being dependent. What it's about learning to be interdependent, which means that I can take care of my own needs, but actually,
but I'd love to be with you.
But it's much more joyful if I share.
So it's
with you.
Icing on the cake.
Yeah. Well, it's like eating, isn't it? You eat what you need for your body, so you choose to have relationships for your spirit, your well-being. I mean, it's.
Are you a vampire, like?
I'm beginning to think you might be.
I can see the fangs coming.
I've got the fangs.
No, but you're talking about nutrition at the higher level.
Yeah, I mean.
You don't mean in any.
No, I mean food for your spirit, which means. Having
and food for thought,
and food, but it's also a balance with your body as well. Your body has to have the right nutrition in order to carry your spirit.
We were talking about the hugs itself. It is important to hug yourself through a certain sexual practice. I can't keep saying it again and again, or they'll bloody report me to the General Medical Council. No, Ofcom or something, Ofsted, something off the record kind of. Anyway, so it is important to be hugged and hug. It is because it's the cheapest way of feeling you're a human and valuable.
Yeah, yes. I find it difficult to do that still.
Today, now.
Yeah, to hug. You know.
Here he
why
comes.
on earth did I say that?
But now that's an example of what's called coaching in the moment.
Yes.
That's something that we practice in Heart Intelligence. When somebody expresses something like that, do it right now.
But now my son is the other way entirely. He loves hugs, but I don't see him all that often.
But when he comes, does he hug you?
Yeah, but you see, I was brought up.
But do you put your arms up or do you wrap him? Yeah. So son is the father of man.
Yeah. It's
amazing what you said.
Yeah, it's a funny thing, but I was brought up not to express emotions so much. You see, so hugging is quite a thing to express emotions.
And in the culture where every man hugging another man is gay.
Yes.
Every man patting the child is a pedophile.
Yeah.
In that culture, to hug needs a lot of courage. I just do it, I'm not bothered.
I've got into doing.
Take me to court, I'll go. But why should I not?
No, there isn't anything wrong with it. You need to be. We need to be properly human, but hugging is a normal thing to do.
Animals do it, Animals cuddle. Animals. It's like keeping the cold out. Okay. Yeah. The next thing that you are expressing is celebrating you.
Yes.
Means
celebrate you.
Celebrating, not celebrating me. From one extreme to the other.
Careful, yes.
Yes. How do you celebrate yourself?
It's actually acknowledging the steps you've made, and I mean, I can celebrate the fact that I have made huge progress in my personal development. The fact that I can hug, just the topic we just
and the fact you can wear a pink shirt,
and the fact that I can wear a pink shirt and feel really comfortable in it.
Yeah. Without all the people telling you it's meant to be this, it's meant to be that. Who cares about all this rubbish?
Yeah, and just thinking, yes, there's still things that I'm working on in myself. There's all sorts of aspects that I still mess up, and we all mess up at times. But I can celebrate the fact that I have learned huge amounts. If I'd known 15, 20 years ago what I know now, my life would have been quite different. We can't turn the clock back.
No.
Relationships do break down.
But this moment you've decided
now I have the skills to actually handle a relationship in a different way,
and show others. And show others.
Yes.
So thank God you had a bad relationship with your mom and your ex-wife. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here.
There's no such thing as a bad experience.
Yes.
It teaches you things.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So everything has taught you to reach this point. You know, when I worked with alcohol, my success was because mainly I would say to the people, look, your wife had left, your son didn't pass, your daughter got pregnant, and you started alcohol. Alcohol was your friend. It was the only friend you had on the planet. And they burst into tears, you know. But that is the truth. But now it's strangling you. It's like a Jewish mama who's so loving you that you can't breathe.
Exactly,
you know.
That's exactly it.
But alcohol was your friend. So because the first they think I'm a Muslim, so I'm against alcohol. So I make that plain. So I tell them I drink. You know, I hardly drink, but it's to make the other person comfortable.
Yeah.
And you know, I was having an awful time at that time in my own marriage myself. Perhaps that's why I was counseling. So sometimes I'd be so tired, my eyes are open, but I'm asleep. Have you ever had that? So tired that the eyes are open and matchsticks wouldn't keep it. And the fellow says, Doc, you're not well. I said, yes, I'm very, very tired. He said, Doc, I'll go for a smoke. I'll come back in half an hour. But that is a compassion showed by the patients to me.
Wow.
And some of these people still love me. And they still come to shows. I can't tell you who's which. But they know that I mean well, and I'm just having but I didn't turn it into them counseling me.
Yes. No, that's important.
You know, and when my first marriage was breaking up, I used to hug my children and have tears, but I can't sort of tell the whole story to my child. I mean, the child is not supposed to be supporting me. They're only 10 years, 12 years old. And if my marriage is breaking up, I've got adults to support me.
Yes,
the children should not be poisoned with my...
Absolutely. You've got to find your support in an appropriate place, in an appropriate way. Absolutely right.
So I feel the only reason we're human is about relationships. I mean, I wouldn't want to be born on an island and every food provided automatically. And what's the point of life if you don't have relationships?
Quite.
Exactly.
I really believe that I'm a human only because of you and you.
Yeah.
And they are so important. And women generally know that relationships are really important in life, and men have often devalued it and think it's actually it's just sort of 10% of my life over here.
Yeah, exactly.
And actually, it is a huge part, and that's why I think that this work that I am doing now with increasing numbers of individuals.
The reason why
is so
Auntie and I couldn't work out was we go to Duke's Mo Garage. I'll see a blue Volvo. If the price is right, I'll say I'll have that, like a woman. And she'll go on to half an hour of round the houses round, and then she said, but I think Anand, you were right, we'll get that car. You know what I mean? This analysis paralysis in a white English failed Christian female and this failed Hindu here. So in a sense, that's why I say I've got a lot of feminine. These things I work from the gut.
I think you know, this business what you were saying before, this feeling of protection and what this husbandry syndrome is, that a male feels that he's got to provide this and that and the other, but it tends to be more on the earthly side, if you know what I mean. The actual material aspects
like
of
cash,
keeping a house going,
mortgage,
all this sort of thing.
The Bruce Springsteen thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of men get hung up on that, and if they can't do that, then they get really depressed. You know, if they lose the job and they can't go out to work through no fault of their own, and they feel really depressed that they are not providing for things. But in actual fact, women tend to look for more provision in the emotional side of things. I know because I've been there. I changed my job. Well, I was in the same department, but I was a customs officer
in Blythe.
Yeah, in Dundee.
Right.
Sorry, I'd moved up after we got married. Moved up to Dundee because I got promotion, but I'd dropped about £1,700 a year, which in those days was quite a lot.
Yes.
So I had to find some means of keeping that house going. So I went out and told people to drive so I was doing, as a VAT officer, from 9 till 5 in the morning,
And then
coming home for a quick bite to eat, going out and teaching from, say, about 6 o'clock up to 11 o'clock at night, on Saturdays and Sundays as
That's
well.
a very, very hard life.
Right. So this was just to keep us going. Now I thought that was appreciated. But the thing is, if you're not there,
you never have time for me.
If you're not there, you're not there.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the reason
somebody
is.
else
You're just
will,
not there.
somebody else will be there.
And really, appreciation is so important. And I'd like to move to the last of the 5 songs I brought in, because this is a song of
This to appreciate.
appreciation. All of me loves all of you, and I want to dedicate this to my lovely partner Christina, who has agreed to marry me. We haven't quite got round to the marriage yet.
Congratulations!
If it's in your mind, do it.
But it's about matching our perfect imperfections.
Yes. Yeah.
Of me, and you give me all of you. Oh.
What a lovely song that you're dedicating to Christina. Christina, you're a very lucky lady. And Simon, you're a very lucky man.
I am.
Lest it be said.
I am, and I know it.
Yes.
Thank you.
And you're celebrating it.
I am
So,
definitely celebrating
tell us, how
it.
do you get your customers, in the sense of how do they choose you? What is it? How is the process? How do you filter? How do they filter?
I've been running just for the last 3 months, and I've been getting out there and networking and meeting people. I've been doing things online.
Facebook page.
Facebook.
What's it called?
Well, it's actually it's my website. It's called menandrelationships.co.uk.
Men and relationships. Yeah.
.co.uk. And using LinkedIn and other sort of means to actually get out there. I've used LinkedIn more than Facebook. And I found that, I mean, some women told me that I'd never get men opening up, that they actually wouldn't sort of start talking about what was going on.
We three have.
And I found that even at networking events, I was one yesterday morning, and men open up to me quite often.
It's becoming okay now.
For
men to feel.
Yeah, and they're willing to. I can provide a safe space, and people tell me, and I've picked up clients that way from these sorts of events. And I'm wanting to do more work with groups next year, but at the moment it's mainly individual clients. And it can be a whole range of different things that people have got as challenges. It can be kind of the relationship has gone flat. Lost the feeling.
So
of
basically, it's
loving,
men
being
and
loved.
feelings, isn't it?
It is.
It's feeling for themselves, feeling for others. It's like we all have been saying about men: don't feel.
Or it could be communicating.
Yes.
Not having the communication skills and thinking. I don't know
Especially
what's going wrong.
emotional communication skills.
Yeah, emotional communication. Because at work, and I call myself, I work for successful men, but they may be successful in the way they communicate at work. But when they come home,
Well, Mark was a perfect example.
Exactly.
Successful businessman from a rich background with a posh accent. What more could you want? in
Because
life?
they've got to put
it
on a persona.
doesn't work
But
at
then-
home
but then
when
the
you're
only
with
person
somebody
Mark-
emotionally involved with.
And talking about home, the only home he's not talking about is Mark himself. And that came across so strongly
Yeah.
that the whole world he can see, but not the tip of the iceberg, but not himself.
Yeah.
The universe within.
Yeah. Sorry, go. It was just that something passed through my mind is that when you're doing that, I would imagine that if somebody starts and gives their
Permission
starts
to
it
feel.
off,
Yes.
other people feel more comfortable.
Yes, of course.
About starting themselves.
Yes.
To
Yes. Yeah, I've seen it in many
To
groups.
open
It
up.
needs one agitator, as they're called.
Yeah.
One who starts the mix.
starts it off. Yeah.
And the ferment going.
Yeah, I've often found in men's groups I've been in, I've shared from the heart, and that's allowed everybody
started
to drop more
Yes.
deeply.
So your own courage, your own conviction, your
Yes.
own belief in yourself and what you're doing is extremely important.
It is.
Because you're not selling men and relationships, you're selling Simon
I am.
McIntosh.
And
Isn't it? All the
fact-
time we're selling ourselves.
I've been there I do
done
this
it.
work.
Yeah.
This is really important to me,
Yeah.
and I really want to be of service to other men. If they're kind
In
of-
love and not in
love,
fear.
Or, yes, but they may be in a place at the moment which is full of fear, but they want to claim more. They want to claim love, even if then at the point of breaking up a relationship, or they're not in a relationship, they haven't been in one.
What will the neighbors say?
Yeah. It's actually.
What will the
working
school
with
teacher
them.
think? She thinks what will the GP say? What will the milkman say? You know, people are so concerned about what others will say, they forget who they are
Yeah.
and how they can serve.
Yeah. So I'm wanting to enable people to get really in touch back with their own heart.
And then they can be authentic with other people,
Yes.
genuine,
Yes.
fully integrated instead of just pretending. Okay, I'll finish then with a song. It's been marvelous having everyone here. But here's a song to your dear wife to be, your fiancée is it called, isn't it?
Yes.
You're the fiancé. She's the fiancée.
I think we don't distinguish between the two. They do in France, but
Vive le de France. Okay, so here goes the song for Christina.
What would I do without your
died as a child, and
Tell
then
us
my
more.
parents came back. Well, they were living in Nigeria, and I was a 2-year-old. I think I was probably confined to my pram. My mother believed in putting babies at the bottom of the garden.
Locking them up and keeping them safe and
keep them safe
away
in the
from the
pram.
real world.
They can watch the leaves and do nothing. Except I do think that my fear of snakes comes from a cobra looking at me
Actually?
while I was in the pram, because
my God.
a cobra was killed very close to my pram.
Right.
Oh my God.
So I have a feeling that me and a cobra kind of eyeballed each other.
Oh my
when I was
God!
pretty young.
You didn't stick your tongue out at him, did you?
I think I probably froze, and
All right.
and actually learning to freeze has been a
Lifestyle.
a lifestyle
then.
habit
Yeah.
ever since then.
Right. So what age were you when you came to Britain?
Two.
So you
and
don't remember much except this King Cobra.
That's it. Yeah.
It sounds like a Mowgli story, you know.
Only Mowgli isn't tied up in a pram.
Nagina was the
I remember. Now, my dad read me
Mowgli stories.
Mowgli stories. Yes, so I loved when he read to me the Jungle Book, and
So was your dad a
just so-
softie?
He was soft with small children, but he didn't know how to deal with them when they got bigger. Because he grew up not knowing his dad. His dad had been a railway engineer in India.
All right.
And his granddad had been a railway engineer in India.
Oh my God.
So 2 generations.
So the one good thing the Brits left us was the Indian Railway. So we can thank you very much. For
Indeed, yeah. That
I very much thank you, sir, for the Indian Railway.
It's funny actually how your life parallels mine.
Oh, go on.
Really?
Very, very.
Go on, tell us.
No, because I was waiting for you to finish.
Okay, all right, okay, go on then. So you have got a long lineage from India, a la Kipling.
Indeed, but my dad was brought up. He was sent back to England when his sister died when she was 3. The whole family was brought up in England, seeing my dad his dad every fourth year.
That must be really hard. It's
Because-
almost like Winston Churchill's life.
Exactly. He grew up without any real relationship with his dad. So he was okay with very small children. He loved having a sort of baby he could
Cuddly.
dandle on his knee.
Yes.
But when
But once they started speaking
he-
and arguing
Yes.
and sticking their tongue out,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He was off to play golf, and,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
I didn't really see much of him growing up.
Okay, so you came to England and you're 2 years old. Where was this?
It was in Surrey,
Surrey,
south
okay.
of London, and
And life was okay?
Life was okay. Yeah, some of my happiest memories of playing with the boy across the road, and we
Do you
pretended.
remember his name?
His name was Jeremy.
Oh, hello,
And
Jeremy.
Jeremy and I played in Africa. We pretended that we were hunting big game in Africa for
Okay.
hour after hour around his garden, and I just loved
He had
that.
never seen Africa.
No, I don't
No,
think he'd
but
ever been
you
there.
took-
I
you took him to.
I did. And we would sort of his mum was quite happy because he knew that we would be sort of hiding behind the blackcurrant
And
bushes
pretending.
or doing something,
Waiting for the
pretending, yeah.
hippopotamus or something.
Indeed, yeah.
Rhinoceros. Okay, then.
Wouldn't be allowed now. Health and safety. What's happening to him?
Oh, there's a.
Oh, I can't let him out there.
Oh,
Too much
he
danger.
thinks there's
you
a
know.
snake there. Let's go to the psychiatrist. Okay,
Yeah.
and how was school for you?
I went to boys' schools, all boys.
Which again is a castration.
It's-
I very seriously believe that children should grow up in a natural world.
Yeah.
Yes, you'll be a bit distracted by the girls, but when would you not be distracted by the girls? If you learn how to cope with distraction from the girls, this is what the nuns and the priests would say. I went to a Catholic school.
Did you? Right.
Yeah. Poor thing. So you went to a boys' school, and was it like a residential school, or were you?
I didn't board for the first few years, but from the age of 10 onwards, I was a boarder.
So just when you started exploring relationships and sexuality, you were sent to a boys' school.
Absolutely.
Buildings that architects and whatnot want to preserve, I think, well, it's just a concrete slab, for heaven's sake.
Yes.
What aesthetic value has it?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And how is it serving human beings?
Yeah.
Okay, so you moved away. Were you married at the time?
I got married while I was
an architect.
An architect, and I had a good marriage with 4 children. At least it certainly felt pretty good for a long while. But it's one of those things that the cracks were developing over time and not being dealt with.
It's called settlement in mining settlement. Okay, well, and your children are all around and you see them?
Yeah, I see all 4 of them. I've got my elder daughter was married just a few weeks ago.
Wow.
And I really,
What's her name?
Catherine.
Hello, Catherine.
And I made a speech, and I loved making speech. It was I was a very proud dad. In fact, sort of tears were coming down my face during the parts of the service.
But
some
big
of the
boys,
music.
but big boys don't cry.
No, I've learned to cry, and that's something else. I actually was meeting my other son a few weeks before that, when my other daughter was graduating from university, and we had a lovely chat in a pub. Opened up in a way that we never have before.
So you became friends.
Yeah,
like two adults.
And I could shed tears even in a pub. And he said, "Dad, you can't do that. We're in a pub." And I said, "I can actually shed tears anywhere now. I've learned how to do this." And even he was very close to them.
My eldest son Shesh and I went to the General Medical Council for a crime I haven't committed, like give a sick note. And when they started questioning me, I said, "Please, you know my name, it's on the computer. Why do you want me to talk like a criminal?" And, I go straight for the jugular, Then they said, "What happened?" I said, "Do you know what it feels like taking the ashes of your own child to its mother, who is estranged from you, and there's a white woman married to you standing behind you?" And tears started flowing. My son started crying for the first time about his brother's death after, I think, 8 years. That's the first time he cried. That's one thing. And secondly, the Indian Prime Minister, a tough old bird called Narendra Modi, he's just all over the world.
Yes.
He's just, you must have heard about him. He was talking to Mark Zuckerberg.
Yes.
Mr. Facebook. And he first of all said, "Can you tell your parents to stand up, please?" And everyone clapped. He's honoring the parents. He said, "I'm so honored that your parents have produced such a child." And then I could see him choking. And he said, "My mother has brought me up. My father had died. But there are several mothers." But he just couldn't contain himself. Tears are flowing. So this is a male Indian Prime Minister who is so anglicized, even him, in the Western way, that big boys don't cry. But he did cry. And I'm so pleased he did, because he's setting an example for people.
I think that's so important.
Yes.
I learned this after my marriage broke up. After 25 years, I discovered real grief for the first time. When my father had died 10, 12 years before, I hadn't found tears. I was so repressed that I couldn't even find grief. But I did for my marriage, because it was so important to me. And realizing that this had broken really sort of split me up. And I found myself howling in tears in the shower at work, having cycled to work. And I just thought, I need some help here. I need to discover how to deal with this, because I'm feeling such raw emotion, which I've never felt before, because it's not that it wasn't there, I've just held it down so tightly. So
there's that, not just catharsis, you're discovering the beauty of sadness.
Yes, there is real, and that's something that I've been working on recently, is that there can be a kind of joy in a whole range of feelings. If you feel them fully, there can be a joy in anger. If you're just allowing it to flow, there can be joy in envy when you see somebody else has got. Absolutely. So I grew up with completely in the dark about relationships. I knew nothing about handling. I didn't have any sisters. My mum wasn't really in her feminine. She was she'd been an army officer and a colonial officer's wife.
Oh my God!
And sort of
is your mum alive?
Really sort of. No, she died 2 years ago. I had a really good relationship in the last few years of her life. You lost yours
makes
recently.
Two of us the same, because my mother was not quite Hattie Jakes, but she never expressed her emotions. My mother wrote very soft stories,
Did she?
She wrote books on. I don't know if I have one here. I don't have one here. My mother wrote a story book with 16 stories, got it published at the age of 14 in 1942 in British India from a village.
Wow.
So
that's
there's a
quite
very
something.
soft side of her, but somewhere she learned to hide her feelings.
Yeah.
And so
But then in those days, you know,
Yes.
you weren't
Allowed.
You weren't allowed to, especially as men, to,
yes.
to show.
Oh,
the
even
feelings
women,
as
even
much.
women.
Yeah, you had to have the stiff upper lip.
Yes, yeah, well-
and just do it quietly,
Yes,
discreetly.
discreetly.
Yeah.
So I would say in India, a man going kuchi 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 with his baby, and then the father-in-law comes, immediately put the kid down.
Really? Oh,
Because that child
same sort of
because
conditioning.
that child is a product of sexuality
Ah, yes.
and
Yeah, yeah,
softness and femininity. And the old man might think, I love his daughter. What the hell? Of course I do. So things were very Victorian, even for yourselves, you
Yes.
two selves. Okay.
Suppression, really.
Yes.
Suppression of feelings and emotions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I was brought up by women because my mother was divorced. And so I was brought up totally by women, and I was too soft. I didn't have the male...
Okay, the male hormone.
no,
Gene.
not the male hormone.
No, I know him. He's he's got a very good marriage, and he's had a bad one too, and he's
Yeah.
fought illness, and that's why I tease him a lot. But he's an amazing guy. Yeah, just to introduce him, I met Glenn at the Speakers Club, and he was just asked to make a pronto speech, and he talked about his illness and his divorces. I thought, what a spiritual guy, you know. I instantly fell in love with him. I said, this guy has to come on radio. Is that true?
That's true.
I was
Yeah.
so
Very
impressed
true,
that this
yeah.
white-haired, 6'2", wasp, and I was so impressed that he was talking feelings. You know, I'll give you quickly an example of the opposite. About a year before I left practice, a young English lad, about 32, walks in and said, "Doc, I think I've got peptic ulcer." And I said, "Okay, what's eating you?" "Well, I had a curry last night." I said, "Didn't you know English?" Like, I said, "What's eating you?" So he says, "Could it be that I lost my father 2 weeks ago?"
Yeah.
I said, "How many fathers do you have?" You know, very good, telegraphically. But I've known this guy from the age of 0.
Really?
I looked after his mother when she was pregnant.
And he hadn't thought to mention it.
Yeah.
No,
No,
well,
no, no.
that's
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
typical of
Yeah.
a male reaction.
So I wrote him some sleeping tablets and say, "See you in 2 weeks." He cried, and the prescription was still left on the table.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you see? I made an offer which I hope he wouldn't take,
Yeah.
like an olive
Yeah.
branch, because he'd really come
Yeah.
for tablets.
Yeah.
Or some other doctor might have sent him with a pipe down his throat. It's nothing to do with that. He's a child hurting for his mum
Yeah.
or dad. So, okay, you were telling us more then.
Yeah, so I went away to boarding school, and that's an environment where you've got to learn to survive.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was in a boarding school as well.
Right, and so I really repressed everything.
Yes.
And I didn't even know I was angry about things. I discovered when I was middle-aged that I could learn when I was angry if I listened to myself. And when I started
learned
when I started shouting, I was probably angry. I couldn't feel it,
Yes.
but I could
But
notice
it's on the
that I started-
surface. you
Yeah,
said.
I said, so how do I know what I'm feeling until I hear what I'm saying? And that's that was the product of growing up as a child, having to just be really careful, keep away from the bullies.
Walking on landmines and eggshells.
Absolutely.
Sick of the same old radio sound? Then you need vibrant radio.
Very good afternoon to Simon McIntosh, who has brought us a wonderful topic. And Glenn, Simon is the closest from here. He lives in Fenham. I come from Heaton.
Yeah, I've only got half a mile to walk.
I've only got 2.5 miles. What have you got to?
37.
37 miles one way.
One way.
Oh my God. So that must take an hour.
Yeah, thereabouts.
Okay. So obviously the topic is very interesting to you, that you bothered to volunteer yourself. So tell me about yourself first of all. I think, Simon, it'll be important to know whence you came, about your relationships. A man talking about relationships, what has the world come to?
Well, that's the thing. Yeah.
Go on, tell us about your relationship.
Well, I think the start of it really is actually my journey in learning about relationships is
Right.
having been in a marriage for 25 years and it falling apart.
Okay, the marriage falling apart.
Yeah, the marriage just completely collapsed, and I hadn't seen it coming, and I felt really shattered because.
Say, what have I done? What have I done?
Well, exactly. I knew that things weren't brilliant. I
Yeah.
mean, it was obvious. That,
Well, whose
that-
is? Who's it?
But actually having it sort of really smash apart was something that really took me by surprise. So I spent the last 7-8 years
Studying it.
trying to work out. Okay, so
What went wrong? Where?
What happens in relationships? And I realised that I knew nothing about it. Like most men, our conditioning is not conducive to us learning about what happens in
Well,
relationships.
big boys don't cry.
Exactly, and big boys don't even know what's going on inside. they stiff upper lip. They just keep stum and just get on with things.
Yes.
And I discovered that actually that doesn't work very well in
No, it
relationships.
hurts.
No.
Because inside you're just another human, just like the women are.
Yeah.
You've got all the same feelings. You cuddled your mother, you kissed her, you hugged her, you drank milk from her breast, and suddenly you're this hard robot who's there just to earn the bread.
It's not that sudden, but it's a gradual process.
Over time.
Yeah, it's sort of a 2-year-old boy is just like a 2-year-old girl. They have all access to the whole range of emotions.
And a 1-year-old boy is just not even a human child. Have you seen on Facebook fish and them kissing? It's amazing the things that you see on Facebook. So humans have the capacity to reach out, and animals too, and it's all weeded out of us, don't you think?
Yeah, indeed. And the boy kind of learns to shut down instead of going from joy to anger to jealousy to whatever,
To cope.
all in a few seconds.
Yes.
We actually start shutting that down and actually losing access to knowing what's going on.
Because big boys don't cry.
Absolutely. So I realised that I'd been shutting down my emotions. I'd been blaming my ex-wife for all sorts of stuff, which was stuff I'd been carrying from my childhood.
But she's a victim of her upbringing, you're a victim of yours.
Absolutely.
And never the twain met.
All of us actually
Each one of us, yes.
carry huge wounds. So I wanted to do something about it. So when
But tell me a bit more. As a child,
Yeah.
were you just an average English child playing with toys and Muppets and things like that? Or were you extra soft-hearted and liked music and quietly would do some painting and poetry and romancing at the age of 4?
Well,
Which were you?
I think my ambition as a child was not to be noticed, because I thought that being noticed actually could get you into trouble. So I really tried to fit in always. And I think I was probably a sensitive child, and I loved my imaginative games and things.
E.T. style.
Yeah, but I pretended I was in Africa because I'd been born in Africa.
Tell us more.
And
But that must make a big difference to your outlook on life.
well, I don't actually remember it because I nearly died. Keep away from the very dubious teachers that some of them that there were in these schools. And,
Yes, that's true. I had that problem.
But dubious in
I
the
was a
sense-
bedwetter
Okay.
at boarding school because I didn't know why, but every morning, and of course I used to get the slipper, whack it, but discovered that the headmaster was into little boys.
Well,
But fortunately, he kept away from me.
Well,
that way.
I was in the hostel for 10 months. My mother went to Sweden with a little boy, and there's 3 children. My father couldn't look after 3 children. So my grandfather, my mother's father, said, put him in the hostel temporarily, only 2 miles away from home. I used to be very unhappy there because it's all discipline, and Catholic and discipline. And new Catholics, converts, they're even more disciplined. So the priest said, Father Thomas said, Anand, I said, yes, Father. You get very sweaty in the night. Go to the middle floor. Don't put the light on. Put on the fan and I'll come and see you. And something in me told me, this is not right. So I put on the light and then put the fan on. So there's a lot of lurking gayness in boarding schools.
And the clergy as well.
And the clergy, yes.
Because it's been repressed. That's why.
Yes, because they've grown up in the
It's not
wartime.
natural.
Yeah.
To repress those. I mean, we're built in with them. I mean, God made us in a certain way. One of them, which is that you have sexual desires.
And instead of talking to us and explaining, the priest would never. But again, you got Jesus was celibate, Virgin Mary was celibate. All Christians are celibate. No, they're not celibate. They need to rejoice in sexuality.
Yeah. I mean, if you haven't got the access to the female sex, then there's always masturbation.
Yes.
Which relieves the pressure.
Yes, but then
that's
Hindus go blind if you do that.
Is that right?
God, where's my glasses?
I mean, people think that it's wrong, but if it relieves the pressure and stops you from your thoughts going in that particular direction,
it's better than rape.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're saying that your teachers were a bit dicey.
Yeah, there were.
And again, that would repress your sexuality. Anything that you look in the mirror and find yourself attractive,
Yeah.
you start cutting it off
No,
because you didn't want to be hounded by teachers.
Yeah, no, I still find it difficult to talk about things being sexy.
Yeah.
There's still kind of there's something in
But
me.
Simon, I think
from my conditioning.
you're very sexy.
Oh, thank you.
There's a table in between them.
No, but
I
why
can't
be
hit him
so
from here.
Why be so scared? Why be so scared? And okay, so you finished school quite happily.
Yeah, pretty happily.
Okay.
And
what were your topics, subjects? I meant.
Oh, I did a whole range of things, but I loved art most.
Okay.
So art and English I really enjoyed. I also did maths and physics, which I didn't like.
You did the masculine subject.
Yeah, I did a combination of them.
All right.
And went into a profession which I then found I couldn't
Which
do.
was?
Architecture.
Okay.
Oh,
So
right.
just two.
Maths and,
I spent
Physics,
8 years sort of
Hating it.
Well, just
Coping.
I enjoyed various bits of it.
Like
Yeah.
what?
But I really enjoyed designing a really good plan.
Yes.
To actually make a building work for people. I was never interested. Most of my colleagues liked the way the buildings looked, the elevations.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sort of, they wanted to photograph buildings with no people in, just as very pure bits of art.
Yeah.
I was never interested in
but
that. I was interested for how it
people.
worked for people.
You're serving humans.
Yeah.
The Beacon building, it took them a year and a half before they put a signboard up. The Beacon building is still controlled by the architect telling them not to put posters in the window.
Oh, right.
I mean, what the hell is this about?
Yeah.
Is it about people or is it about the architect's
exactly.
fantasy?
Mind you, I mean, some of these things